if you are prone to anxiety and something I said on the internet gives you lifelong anxiety, it's not me that's the problem, it's you. And you need to get therapy for your anxiety until you're better.
I can imagine situations in which I would say in which I could say something hateful towards a group of people or towards a particular person that's going to sort of affect them. It's going to harm them, and it's going to harm them in a way that's not threatening their life. It's not going to destroy their reputation, but it causes them a form of harm. But this kind of justification for hate speech laws is not only rejected, but often laughed out of the room by free speech advocates. It's parodied. It's seen as infantile, the idea that you should be protected from words. They're just words. You need to learn how to toughen up a little bit. I don't care if you're going to be a bit upset. I don't care if you're going to feel anxious. People develop lifelong anxiety problems based on hate speech. And sure, that might be, I'm almost certain that they do, and it might be like irrational, it might be sort of an overreaction, let's say, but it's not like they chose to be of such a, as you would see it, probably weak psychological constitution. It's not their fault that they're the kind of person that gets affected.
I don't think that's what happens. I think what you're talking about is people being bullied as children and called names and mocked for their appearance or for their skin color or whatever, right? But I am not saying that children in the playground should be able to be racist to each other, and that's the point of free speech, right? Because when you're talking about children, there's also an element of it's an educational environment, right? And these things, but my point is these things are best regulated by the school, the parents, the whatever, right? But what would I have to say to you to give you lifelong anxiety?
Well, it takes a lot to make me cry, but there are lots of people who, I mean, we see it because we see stories that people take the piss out of, because they'll see a story that someone said something that's made people feel anxious, or that's given someone a panic attack or something like that. And people often make fun of this because they think it shows how sort of weak and snowflakey the libs are, right? But the fact that we're able to sort of make a joke like that demonstrates that there do exist such people.
No, it doesn't necessarily demonstrate that at all. What it demonstrates is that there are some people who have worked out that complaining about the speech of others is a very good way to get attention.
So let's say
for your cause.
Let's say then, for example, that I sort of wrote the blog that used your words, and I monetized it, and I made sort of like £20 off it. Didn't actually do that well because most people were like, well, this is someone else's book, I'm just going to go and buy the book.
It's not necessarily about how much money you made, it's about how much money I lost, but carry on.
So £20, let's say.
I lost £20.
Or maybe you lost £10 because one of the people wouldn't otherwise have bought the book, something like this, right? So it's sort of a negligible amount of money.
Yeah.
And then you try to sue me, you say, you can't do this. And I say something like, oh, look, man, it's £10.
Yeah. But that's why I would never sue you in that situation.
But you'd have the right to, and I think you'd probably want to defend the right of an author to do such a thing.
Yes.
But couldn't I say something similar, which is that, like, yeah, sure, these words that you're writing are kind of harmful, but it's so minimal, especially in that instance.
But there's no way for me to avoid the harm.
And I don't think there's a way for somebody who's
prone
to anxiety.
Of course there is. If you are prone to anxiety and something I said on the internet gives you lifelong anxiety, it's not me that's the problem, it's you. And you need to get therapy for your anxiety until you're better.
Perhaps, but it's not like somebody chooses to be in that situation to start with, right?
I'm not suggesting they do. What I'm saying is they're choosing not to change the situation that they're in. By not seeking the support they need to deal with what is an underlying mental health problem.
It's possible they don't realize that it's lurking there until it's activated.
In that case, I'm doing them a great service by pointing it out, aren't I?
Yeah, well, perhaps. That's interesting.
This is my attitude to all of this stuff because I am someone who's, as I say, I'm a very different person to the person I was 20 years ago. And one of the reasons is I've purposefully sought out ways of thinking and ways of rewiring my brain to be more resilient, to be able to deal with difficult things, to deal with the anxieties I felt about all sorts of things. And that's why I'm not someone who is careless. I'm not saying what I'm saying as a trying to own anyone. I'm saying what I'm saying from a point of view which is I know that everyone experiences anxiety over something, and the fact that you experience anxiety is, number one, not to be unexpected. You're a human being. Anxiety is part of life. Number two, if you don't like experiencing anxiety when other people say things you don't like, you are the person responsible for dealing with that. And that is the best way for you to live your life. That's the best way for me to live my life. That's why when like when I turned down that contract and a comedian, Kate Smurthwaite, insinuated that I was alt-right and a Nazi, I make jokes about it instead of suing her, which I'm sure I could, right? Because while I do think it's important for me to be able to go and defend myself in court against deeply damaging allegations, I don't think the fact that Kate Smurthwaite called me something is necessarily detrimental to my reputation or to my character. What would be detrimental to my character is if every time somebody said something nasty about me on the internet, I decided to internalize that and go, oh, someone called me ugly, someone called me fat, someone called me skinny, someone called me this, therefore I'm now anxious. That would be the worst possible thing for me to do. So I'm not saying what I'm saying out of a lack of compassion. I just don't think it's healthy to take the words that other people say and internalize them as something that means you now have to experience emotions about it. Do you see what I mean? And I am someone who, as we talked about, has with Francis, we have a large YouTube channel. You can imagine that not all the comments we always get are necessarily positive and helpful and supportive.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Now, I'm not going out there and going, hurtful comments on my YouTube channel should be controlled or measured or they cause me anxiety, because if I find that they cause me anxiety, it's up to me to deal with it in the ways that I've described, or it's up to me not to read them, right? I can't not experience pain if you punch me in the face. I can not read comments that I don't want to read on the internet.